The hatred directed at Israel and Jews was highlighted over the weekend when Israeli athletes were booed at the Winter Olympics. Think about what sort of a person would do that. Think about the message that sends to the world, especially with the sickening history of the Palestinian Liberation Organisation's terror attack against the Israeli team at the Munich Olympics in 1972. But this is what Israelis and Jews are forced to live with unless we stand up. The President made a pertinent point about this challenge at Bondi today.
We stood with Australian Jews, for we are one big family, and when one Jew is hurt, all Jews feel their pain. That is why I'm here today, to embrace and console the bereaved families. Anti-Semitism here in Australia is not a Jewish problem. It is an Australian problem and a global problem.
Yeah, well said. It's obvious, isn't it? But this issue, too many don't understand. This issue, this struggle, it belongs to all of us. Much of the animosity against Israel is fuelled by misinformation. Claims of genocide, claims of deliberate starvation, claims of targeting civilians. You've heard it all over the past couple of years. And fundamental to this is the propaganda that's come out of Gaza from Hamas, often described as the Gazan Health Ministry or other bodies, but always effectively just whatever is pushed out by Hamas. It's the long-term, long-time governing entity of Gaza at the same time that it's a murderous Islamist terrorist outfit. As this horrible war has gone on, much of the world's media has simply repeated and amplified this propaganda. Unproven claims about numbers of children being killed, or even clearly false claims about the targeting of hospitals and the like. And when people are fed these lies and they believe them, well, obviously it fuels animosity towards Israel. And crucial to this debate is the official death count. And there were uncorroborated reports over the weekend that an Israeli official had confirmed Hamas's claim that 70,000 people had been killed in Gaza during the war. Now, that's an extraordinarily low number for more than 2 years of war in a heavily populated urban area, but that could indeed be the toll. And let me stress that any civilian casualties, especially children, is shocking, harrowing. In fact, it's intolerable. This death and trauma deliberately triggered for the people of Gaza by Hamas is intolerable. But so many blame Israel, even when, as I've discussed many times and shown you, it clearly went to great lengths to minimise civilian casualties, giving up the element of surprise, for instance, by warning Gazans exactly where it's going to bomb and when, and providing safe passage for civilians out of there. Israel has argued the number of civilian casualties has been exaggerated by Hamas, whose soldiers and terrorists operate in civilian clothing among civilians. And that's where another story is illuminating. Again, it's impossible to independently verify, but there is widespread reporting that Hamas is paying a new stipend to the widows of its operatives from this Gaza war. And the number quoted is 50,000. That's 50,000 widows of Hamas fighters. Clearly, that suggests that the overwhelming majority of those killed in the Gaza war have been Hamas terrorists and operatives. We may never know, but we have to try to find the facts because the facts matter. And too often in the public demonisation of Israel by the media, the facts don't seem to matter at all. Now, I want to remind you of a comment by the ABC's Global Affairs editor, Laura Tingle. Remember her nonsensical and ignorant framing of the Bondi terrorist attack.
These two men were...
We've got nothing to do with religion.
These two men were...
We've got nothing to do with religion.
Nothing to do with religion. We talked about the dangerous absurdity of that at the time. But today, discussing the President's visit on ABC TV, Tingle seemed to correct herself, suddenly grasping the central role of religion.
Average Australians were out trying to celebrate a Jewish festival and were attacked for their religious identity.
Well, there you go. Still, she couldn't help herself, telling her ABC audience that telling her ABC audience about the level of opposition to President Herzog's visit.
Not just pro-Palestinian groups, but large sections of the Jewish community itself are very unhappy about President Herzog visiting Australia.
Large sections of the Jewish community are opposed to this visit. There are about 120,000 people in the Australian Jewish community, according to the census. And Tingle, to back up her claim, cited a letter signed by 600 people. So a collection of 600 is portrayed as large sections of the Jewish community. We're talking about less than 1% of the community. In fact, this is about half of 1%, 0.5% of the Jewish community, which in Tingle speak or in ABC speak is large sections. In reality, the only comforting thing about the Israel haters and the protesters is that they represent such a tiny fraction of our population. Facts matter, numbers matter, the truth matters.